Hello everybody and welcome to Season 4, Episode 8 of the Property Empress podcast. My name's Andrew and this is where I normally introduce my co-host, the Property Empress, Anna. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say that she's not going to be with us today. She had some dental surgery this week and we really wanted to get a podcast out, but she's just not well enough to do it. So the bad news is you are left with just me. It's going to be me talking about property for this episode, and I hope that I can do it justice. The good news is I will be covering a subject I know a lot about because it is something which is my main business at the moment. It's something I've been doing for a while, and also it's something that I understand a lot of listeners have asked about talking about this in more detail. I know that it was a very popular podcast in the previous seasons when Anna covered it. And it has been requested since I've been on as well this season. So very happy to say I will be talking about serviced accommodation today. We will be talking about what serviced accommodation is, any particular version of serviced accommodation that we offer, and how to find those sort of properties, as well as the benefits for landlords. So the kind of thing you would talk about to a landlord when you're trying to sell this to them. And we'll finish up by just talking about the systems that we put in place. If you're setting up a business for this, then it's important to have automation and particular systems in place. And I will talk about how we do that before we leave. So let's crack on with the first question. Very broad, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but I will break it down for the purpose of covering everything today. What is serviced accommodation? Well, serviced accommodation, very simply put, is short-term letting. So that is renting a property for under the term that an assured short-hold tenancy would cover. And that is typically under 30 days. So you're looking to rent anything from 30 days to just a single night. This is the most common version of this would be you would find a hotel or a bed and breakfast. They're an entire building that they then sublet each individual room at an individual price. And that is essentially what service accommodation is. The advantage of service accommodation over, say, a hotel is you are renting an entire property. So with that, you are being able to do everything you would if you were at home. So that is, you will have your own bathroom, you will have your own kitchen facility, and also with service accommodation, they are spec'd up to a certain level where you will have all of the amenities you need to cook. You will have toiletries provided and towels and bedding. It's all there for you. All you're really doing is you're just being able to make yourself at home, but you will have everything there ready for you to do it. And that's what service accommodation is. And the particular area of service accommodation which is of interest to investors at the moment is rent to SA, so R2SA, which is renting a buy-to-let property and then subletting or breaking it down and renting out the whole apartment on shorter terms, anything from, like I said, from 1 to 30 days. And that is essentially what rent to SA is. And you are renting it from a landlord and then they get in the solid monthly income, but you are then able to break it down, and that's where your profit is because you're able to charge more per night than you would if it was on a long contract. So a couple of things with this is it is a lot more work to do because you are preparing for new people potentially every day. So you need to make sure that they've got fresh bedding, fresh linen, fresh toiletries, everything's clean and tidy, sanitized, which is a very important thing. Post-COVID era, it has to be clean and tidy, and you have to have it to that level that it is sterilized effectively for guests to be able to feel safe. And you also take the property from a landlord on usually a longer term basis. So when you are taking this property on, you ideally want to take it for at least a year. I would typically look for something more 3 to 5 years. So it's a long-term project. And I will explain, actually, when I talk about benefits to landlords, I'll explain why that is. But then that just gives you the chance to set it up how you want and break it down over the short term for any guests who come and stay. So how do I find Rent to SA? Well, there's a few sources, and these are the sources that I have used. I've used all of these so far, and there are many others as well, but I'll talk about the main 4 that I use that I find the most effective. OpenRent is a great source for finding properties from landlords, because what you want to be able to do is contact these landlords directly and explain to them why it's so good to do. But OpenRent is normally landlords directly. You do have some agents on there who are advertising. You also have private landlords who manage their own portfolios. But you very often have single people just trying to rent their own house out and don't want to pay the estate agent fees. So OpenRent is a good place to go and find those properties, the ones you really want to pick out, the ones that you continually see. And I'll explain why that's important later. But if they are popping up every 6-12 months on your radar, then that's one that you should have flagged up as a potential R2SA property, because there'll be some opportunities there. You can also get sourcing properties. There are many companies out there who will offer you a property for a fee. What that basically means is they are doing the hard work, finding the houses, making the agreements with the landlords, setting everything up, and then you just pay for the privilege of doing that. It's typically £2,000 to £3,000 per deal. But remember, these deals are cash flowing at a higher rate, so you will be looking to get that back in the first year anyway. So it's not really a big fee when you're taking in how long you're really planning to do it and how much you're likely to make over the long term. So yeah, sourcing agents can be really good. I would say with sourcing agents is you do have to hunt around to find the good ones. There's a few out there that will just throw them out quickly and not do the research, but it is up to you to do due diligence as well to make sure that you are finding the right properties that will work, that there's a market for it. And then of course you will be viewing the property as well, so to make sure that the condition of the property is suitable to let out because you are letting out a higher standard than you would just a standard buy-to-let property. You have to put a little bit more care and attention into the finer detail for this kind of thing. So any kind of sourcing, do due diligence on it as well, but there are some good sources out there who will find you good properties in decent areas, and the legwork's done. You don't have to go through the legislation and the rules and regs with them and make sure that it's all above board before you sign the contract. They will do all of that for you. So that's a good option too. You can just go down the letting agent route. If you can get good connections with a letting agent, maybe you're running buy-to-lets already and they rent it out for you. There's opportunities there for properties that just stick. Sometimes they can't rent them. Sometimes the security is needed of having a long-term tenant for the landlords. And actually, if you can work with the letting agents on this, then there's a lot of opportunities for you to take out properties on their books and have them as rent to SAs as well. So I would say with that a lot of letting agents don't necessarily like that, and also in a market where there's high rent demand, which in my opinion is most of the time, there's usually demand for rent. But what you want to do is show where your advantage of doing rent to SA over just having a tenant is. So I would get in with some letting agents and see if that's something that they would consider as well. It is a good opportunity for them as well, because they can rent out without having to worry too much about the management in between, and they still get their fees from the landlords themselves, so you're not actually paying for that either. So that's a good one to do. I have had referrals, so there would be some that I've picked up from the various different means, and then they have said, well, actually my friend is interested in doing this as well, their contract's coming up soon. And I've had that where I've taken on a property and then her partner's property, who he also had a rental, and he'd had a long-term tenant in there, and then a couple of tenants in, one after the other in the course of a year, and he really just wanted the long-term tenancy again. So yeah, I was able to offer rent to SA, where I manage the property itself and I look after it, and there's no management. He just takes his fees each month. He takes his rent in each month, and it's a really good system. But that I got that contract because I was able to show and offer a good service on his partner's property first. So referrals are good. So you do a good job, stick to what you say you're going to do, and you don't necessarily even have to go hunting for them. Sometimes they just come to you. The last place is one of the most common scouting places, very much like open rent for me. Private landlords will advertise on Facebook Marketplace under houses to rent. You will find letting agents on there as well. If the letting agents advertising on there, generally not interested in rent to SA. It's just a form of marketing for them. Generally, it would be in a marketing contract they have with Rightmove or Zoopla or something like that. So they will use a marketing company that blanket markets lots of different platforms, and Facebook is one of those platforms it covers. But there are individual landlords out there as well who advertise on there. And again, keep an eye on these. Sometimes this can be a bit longer term. Just check the ones that you're taking longer to shift or the ones that are coming on constantly, and get in touch with them and see if you can offer them something a little bit different, something that's a little bit more secure, a little bit longer term for them. It might not be for them, but it might be something that they are interested in. So it is worth exploring. So I did want to talk about benefits for the landlords, and this is part of your negotiating. So if you get in front of some of these property owners who have been renting out their property just to tenants for years, maybe, or maybe they've tried to for a while and they've just not got the tenants they wanted, or even any tenants at all. You want to be in a position to offer them something different, offer them a solution so that the problem they have is essentially gone away. And that's really what you're doing with the rent to SA contracts, is you are solving problems for landlords who are having difficulty renting, either to the terms that they want or for the amount of time that they want it rented as well. So benefits for landlords, you can use these when you are negotiating. So make sure that you jot down some of these things, because it is important for landlords to realise why they should go with you instead of a buy-to-let contract, a normal tenant. And let's face it, normal tenancies are normal. They are what a landlord is going to expect. So if you're offering something different, something outside the normal, you've got to make sure they realise why it's worthwhile doing that. So when you get in front of these people, make sure that you are professional, that you have it all set up properly, and that you can explain to them what it is, how it works, and why it's good for them to have you rather than a regular tenant in the property. So I would say is with landlords, buy-to-let properties are advertised, I know quite a lot of the time they're advertised as a passive income. While you will get monthly rent and you don't really have to do too much most of the time, you are still managing the property. Even if you've got a letting agent doing that for you, if anything big goes wrong, you are still accountable, and you will need to confirm or answer those questions if an emergency happens. Say there's a burst water main or a boiler breaks down, it needs to be replaced, high expenses. What you are doing is you are managing these items for the tenant, and it's not really ever truly passive, because you're always going to have to either manage the letting agent or the tenant themselves if you self-manage. What you have with rent to SA is, I wouldn't say it's truly passive, because you still want to check in. You want to make sure that they understand what's going on in their property and that it's being looked after. Periodic reviews are always good for that kind of thing. But I would say it's as close to truly passive as you can get for a landlord if you're renting to a management agent doing short-term lettings and serviced accommodation, because any kind of day-to-day maintenance is gone. That's just managed by the contract. My contracts are, I will pay for anything myself up to the value of £100. And realistically, I rarely contact any of my landlords if there's an expense that runs over that. Because if it's like, for instance, about a month ago, I had a broken washer and a tap, and it turns out that I needed the entire tap in the kitchen replacing. It's about £150 to do it all. But I just did that because I've got a long-term contract with this tenant, and the advantage for her is that she is not having to she's not having to constantly manage the property. So for my end, if I can just spend extra £50, I can keep that with her, and then the agreement with her works better, and we can keep it on a longer contract. The better it works for the landlords, then the more likely they are to extend. So you really want to be able to manage little bits. You'll have the team in place to manage these little problems anyway. But I would say it is as close to truly passive as a landlord as you can get on their side. So that's a big selling point for them. Another thing for that is you don't have to do much as a landlord if you're renting to a management company, but also you can do a long-term contract. So you will find, this is why I said earlier, keep an eye on the properties which are coming up every 6 months, every year, and being rented again. High turnover, particularly for amateur landlords or landlords who are looking for more passive income. It will put them off renting if they're having to continually market it. You know, they're having void periods and they're having to spend money doing credit checks, and then they probably have to do little touch-ups and refurbs, cleaning, stuff like that. And if they're having to do that twice a year, it becomes a bit more of a job than perhaps a landlord would be looking to do. I typically would look at least 3 years on a contract for any of my landlords. The truly passive side of this also goes hand in hand with having an extended contract. So what you'll be pitching to the landlords is, I'm not only offering you very little work to do once I take on the contract, I'm offering it for a long time as well. The advantage as a landlord, as a management agent on your side, when you're doing rent to SA, is that you can negotiate a rent price there and then for the next 3 years. So you know what your expenses are going to be for that time. You know how much it's going to cost each month, and then you can plan, you can manage how you run it, how you price your business for the next 3 years, and just gives you some security as well. It kind of will recession proof, or increase proof, I should say. It will increase proof your portfolio as well, because as rents go up, you will be locked in on a contract for at least 3 years where you're paying the same amount. And it can work well for your cash flow, because you rent your prices when you are subletting as a serviced accommodation will inevitably go up over time as well. So you'll end up probably making a little more by the end of the contract than you would at the beginning, which is a good place to be. The other option is, the other advantage of that is, it's not just that it's a long-term contract, it's also that you don't have voids. And if you've got these 6-month turnarounds, there's going to be a point where a tenant moves out and a tenant has to move in. And unless you are super on it and you are really efficient, and you are getting someone in the afternoon after your tenant moves out in the morning, there's going to be void periods, even if it's just a few days. Sometimes it can be a month before the next tenant is moving in, and you don't want that. That's affecting your cash flow as well. So this negates that. It means you're not having to pay, the landlord's not having to pay extra time when it's just sat empty. The 3 year contract means that you are locked in for a long period of time, and you know that you're going to get your rent each month. Guaranteed rent as well, because this is a business structured on the amount of income you're making. And as we know, you can rent a property per night far more than you would be if you're renting it for an entire month, or in 3 months or a year. The guaranteed rent is based on your research. So you will need to go in and make sure that there's a market for the property in the area, work out how much it would be, and then once you have done all of the numbers to make sure that you can make a profit on this each month, that it actually stacks up as a rent to SA for you, then you can enter the contract. And entering the contract means you will have guaranteed rent, because the money comes in and then you pay the rent afterwards. You get good returns on these. Even in low season, you should be more than breaking even. You should be making a slight profit. Even in very slow periods of the year, you'll still be making profit on this, because of the nature of how it's structured and how you're breaking it down. So that is a big sell for them, is that the rent, the rent's always coming in, because you know what the source is. The source is the guests who are staying. Professionally cleaned and maintained is a big selling point as well. If a landlord's having to do it up each time a guest leaves, a tenant leaves, well, it's going to be cleaned every time a guest leaves on Rent to SA. So its general maintenance will be high. It will be clean and tidy. You know, I have cleaners in for 1 to 2 hours after each guest. And I have a property which is rather suited to just single overnight stays. It's near an airport, so it's used as kind of a hub before flights and after flights as well. So I have 24-hour check-in on that, but I have a high turnover on it. So my cleaner will go in nearly every day to that property and spend 1 to 2 hours cleaning and prepping it. Now, most tenants won't clean their house every single day. Maybe they will do it 2 or 3 times a week. But this is being cleaned to a higher level by a professional cleaner on a regular basis, so it will be maintained to a high standard, and that's a big selling point for them as well. They know that it's going to be looked after. So a little summary of what a landlord benefit would be in taking on a Rent to SA management company as their tenants is, well, you will have a pretty passive income for a long period of time without any void periods. And it will be looked after, maintained, and any kind of small expenses will be paid for. So your big selling point is that you really don't have to do much. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to inspect it, and we will be looking after it for you for a long period of time. So there's a lot of advantages for that. Now, I did say at the beginning it is a little bit unusual for anyone who's looking for a normal buy-to-let tenant on an AST. It will be something that they may hesitate to do, and it won't be for everyone. It might be that, no, actually this isn't what I want to do with my property. I want a tenant in. It might be they can find a tenant for a long period of time, or they're happy to manage it. What you're targeting here is landlords who are struggling to rent it or struggling to manage it when they are renting it. The tired landlords, and the main landlords you're going to find who are doing this are the amateurs, the people who have picked up, maybe they've got their own property and they've moved in with someone else and they've kept the property and they're renting it because they think it's, property is a good income, property is a good source of investment for a long time as well because it will go up. But they don't realise actually the amount of work, time and effort that goes into being a landlord and the responsibility that you have. And sometimes the reality check of that can be a little bit disheartening for them and just put them off doing it. But this is where you come in and you offer them the service at for a long period of time, and you're basically answering every question that they asked about, well, can't I just have a tenant in for a long period of time who pays their rent and never bothers me? You're like, yep, that's what we do. You won't hear from us unless you need to for 3 years. And I think that's an ideal thing for distressed landlords. It's exactly what they're looking for. So your numbers, I will go into that briefly before I talk about the automation system when you're setting up a business. When you're running the numbers on this, make sure that it cash flows on the daily rent to make sure that you are making a profit as well. Because it is extra work. I will talk about mitigating some of those extra tasks in a minute. But ideally, with a Rent to SA, a serviced accommodation, you want to be cash flowing £500 profit after your expenses every month. So that is including any costs that you have to do with rent, anything to do with council taxes, bills, so heat, light, electricity, gas, water. Then you will be providing services like Wi-Fi as well. Any sort of television subscriptions that you might offer. All of these go into your expenses, and then so you work that out on an average based on how much the property would generally cost to run, and then you work out how much you need to charge a night. You do market research against what other Airbnbs are doing in the night. So I haven't even mentioned this yet. I've referred to it as service accommodation. Airbnb and Booking.com will be your two biggest platforms to market this. I do have direct bookings as well. So I have my own website, and that is marketed on Google. It has its own links on Facebook and Instagram as well. So I do market it myself directly, and I have my own payment system set up for people to book directly. But the marketing on Airbnb and Booking.com are essential for traffic, because they will be able to see, they'll get a lot more exposure. People will be able to see your property, see the reviews, see how it looks and where it is, and more likely than not book the property. These are the most common platforms to use, and when people are looking to find a place in a certain area, they'll jump straight on Airbnb or Booking.com to do that. I also market on hotels.com through other platforms, so I do the main three marketing companies that letting short-term letting platforms that are out there, and I think you'll get a lot more traffic if you're using all of those as well. But with that, what was I talking with that? Yes, you want to make sure that all of those expenses come in, so that will be also, you pay a commission on that, so you want to make sure that commission, based on the prices that they have, would still cash flow for you. Put very simply, if you're paying £1,000 a month for a property and you are paying £500 a month in all bills, just round all bills up, so your all in is £1,500, and you want to make sure that if the market rent is £120 a night or £125 a night, you would need to, how many nights would you need to fill to hit your break-even point? So your break-even at 125 means, I should have done it on a round number because I need a calculator. But if you are doing 125 times, it is 12 nights. So ideally, what you should be doing when you're running your numbers is you should be basing this on 50% occupancy. So that is, you are renting every other night on average. Typically, you will have a higher average than that. Mine run in the region of 75 to 80% occupancy throughout the year. And it is seasonal as well, so that is something else you'll need to think about. But I will be looking to make a profit. If I rent out for 15 nights, that would be $1,750. So you would be making £250 profit on 50% occupancy after all expenses. So it's a little low, so you probably wouldn't look at that. But if you could get the rent up to like $150 a night, if the market is there for it, then you tick the box at 150. You hit the 50% occupancy because you'll be making 500. There is a broad figure. You will have to look at seasonal pricing. I will talk about pricing in a bit more detail in a minute, because there is something I use to help me with that. But your seasonal pricing will make a difference in your income as well. So if you're looking low season and getting £100 a night, that's okay, because if you're getting £250 a night in high season, then it will more than compensate it. And high season isn't just, we would usually just count June, July and August, but that's not right. It's also half terms, Easter and Christmas as well. So any kind of holiday periods will cover us that. And you will generally find maybe a third of the year would be in high season, sometimes coming up to half, maybe 40 weeks you would have as high season. So as long as you can hit the good profits on that, then you'll do really well. So that is really broadly, look at about a £500 profit with all your expenses in. And once it all works, then you can go to the landlord and negotiate the contract. So that's finding it really. I would say automating is probably the most important thing to help you level up when you're growing the business as well. So when I started, I did everything because I started with one, and I was able to do that. And you kind of feel about on the business and find out where you can improve things and where you can make more money and where you can spend less. And it has been a learning curve of it's been nearly 4 years I've been doing this now. But I've got pretty good systems in place. And I'm just going to talk about a few systems which are really important for you to have just before you get your business set up. And once you've got those in place, if you've got those in place at the beginning, it will mean that you can grow the business side of it much, much quicker. So firstly, a very important thing, most important thing that you have is a PMS. Now, PMS is a property management system. There are tons of them out there. There's lots of options. A property management system will allow you to market your listing on multiple platforms. So that will be, you'll be on Airbnb, you'll be on booking.com, VRBO, which is the third biggest private rent-to-SA platform in the UK. And then there's other platforms that they sub-manage on. So you'll be on hotels.com, Expedia, and you'll have TripAdvisor for reviews and stuff like that as well. So a PMS enables you to market on all of those platforms and also synchronize your calendars. So what you do not want to happen is to have someone book on booking.com and you don't close the calendar on Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, blah, blah, blah. Because that's when you get overbooked. You get double, triple bookings because people think it's still available and it's actually not. It's the biggest key reason to have this in place, because it means your synchronization's all there and it all lines up so that you don't have to go in every time you get a booking and manage that yourself. So it's really important to have that. I personally use a company called Logify. I have used Your Porter and Guesty as well as another one, which is pretty big. But I found Logify the best for integrating automation messages. There's various apps that I use to manage the rest of the business, and they all integrate in the PMS really, really smoothly. So I use Logify. I also was able to, I'm on the highest package they do, which gives me a free website with 3 updates on that as well. So I'm able to go in and change my website, add new properties whenever I like, and it all automates onto my website, onto Google, and onto all of the platforms as well. So PMS is essential. So do a bit of research on that and try and get one of those in place. Alongside a PMS, I have a rather fancy pricing tool. And then the pricing tool enables me to, you can put your prices in. You can just put them in and you think, well, I've done my research. I know roughly what Airbnb charge for these kind of properties at this time, and booking.com, and you can put those in. What a pricing tool does is it will take the market data into account. So it looks at other properties for you so that you're not having to do that research. That research is there. It's all done in live time. So it's all uploaded based on the current events that are happening. So it will also take into account seasonal change. So if you're moving into high season, a holiday season, it will price you according to what you set your base price, but it will base according to what the market is charging roughly in the area with all the other properties around. So it will do that for you. So it will push it up if you need it to go up to a certain level. It will identify any particular events that are happening in the area where your Airbnb is, where your property is. It will identify those and it will price it accordingly, again, based on the market data and the demand as well. So if there is a large event happening somewhere, very often I'll have things like half marathons, triathlons can be on. And then what the PMS will do is it will notice that an event is happening and it will price it accordingly. And you will see other properties. Hotels use this kind of thing because hotels will price based on particular events happening in the area. I have one near a famous racecourse, and around that time of year, hotels will rocket up with pricing, and I'm able to do the same, and the price just goes straight away up. You can also manage minimum nights on those. So if you want to have less cleaning fees, or if the demand is there for people, you make sure that you are booked out for longer. So you can have 2, 3, 4 nights a week if you want. And then the property will be rented out throughout the whole week. And people won't be able to rent just for the individual days. Similarly, if you have a minimum amount of nights to stay, the pricing tool can also remove that minimum night stay if you have the odd day left, and allow you to fill up your gaps as well. It's a really clever tool. It's really good to have because what I found with it is I was just pricing based on what Airbnb recommended me. It doesn't take all market data in for them. They have a smart pricing tool, but in all honesty, it's not that useful. So I always just priced it with a base rate, and then in the higher season, I'd put it up a little bit more. I have had situations where my pricing in the summer has tripled the charge that I would make per night, to a point where I'm not sure if the property is worth that much, but the market says it is. And I worry. And the first time I did it, I have a property I rent for around £99 a night on a normal night, and it went up to 305. And I was like, not sure that I'm going to get complaints about this. But the demand's there. They have nowhere else to stay. This is how much people are paying for this time of year. And it went, and I have lots of them now like that. And honestly, sometimes it can triple your potential income just by using a pricing tool. I pay 1% a month, 1% per booking on that. But with that, like I said, if I'm making 3 times as much on some of my bookings, it's absolutely worth it. And also on the flip side, if it's quiet, it's low season, it discounts for last minute, and it allows you to fill gaps with offering a little bit of a discount on low prices as well. And then it just keeps your occupancy levels quite high, because occupancy is really important with it. Now, I also have an assistant who takes the calls. So I used to take all the calls for my properties. It's got to the point where I have too many to take. I can't be taking tens of calls from guests on a single night, because if everybody's got a problem logging in, or everybody's having a problem, or everybody just decides they want to be in touch with someone, then it becomes a bit of a full-time job, really. I automate everything. I should say this now. All of my properties are 24-hour check-in, and they are all systemized, automated, self-check-in properties. So all of the details are sent to them automatically. This is done by my PMS, by the way. I have automatic email templates. They send them the day that they arrive, and they send the codes for the lockbox for the keys, how to locate the lockbox, and then they're also sent a house manual as well. In fact, my PMS is really good because I've got the highest package they do. They include a downloadable app for guests with their own private check-in, and you can see everything. So I've got my house manual all written in there, all of the check-in details, how to work things, where to go when you're staying. It's just a great tool, and they can just have it on their phone. And most people, they have hard copies in each property, but most people will just want to use it on their phone now. So it's a really good tool to have. But like I said, sometimes people just want to speak anyway, because perhaps they won't read all the information they're sent, because sometimes it can be a lot of emails. You'll get the platform emails, and then there'll be my personal company emails to tell them how to do things. And sometimes they just won't fill in the check-in form. So they arrive and they don't know how to check in. Now I have an assistant who does that for me now. So she works set hours for check-in times, and she deals with any kind of little problems that happen. I still get involved, but I'm far less involved because I have quite an extensive spreadsheet written of what the question might be, what the answer is, where to go next. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, what's the Wi-Fi code? What's the code for the lockbox? Or how do I turn the heating on? And she knows how to answer those questions now. So the guests are fully equipped with it, and they have someone to speak to if they need to as well. If there's a more serious problem, then that gets run by me, and then I can get the other people involved in sorting whatever that might be. So that is cleaners. I have a cleaning team for various cleaning teams, actually. I usually find my own cleaners. Reason being, I want to find someone who can understand what I'm trying to do, and also will do it to a decent level. So it's usually done on referrals. I've got some really good people in place at the moment, and the cleaning team will let me know if there's any low supplies, so that I need to do any reordering. They will look after things. They will tell me if guests have misbehaved in the property, and also if guests are still there, which happens sometimes. I had a guest who was there at 1 PM, and he didn't understand what the problem was when the cleaner knocked on the door, so I had to ask him to leave. But it's a really essential part of your team, because they're the ones that are going to be on the ground floor looking after your property at all times. So you want to make sure that they are reliable, trusted, come with good references, and can do it for you. I in fact have plugins on my PMS that can manage this as well. There are some good companies out there. I'm currently using Turno, which used to be Turnover BNB. They're a good company for finding you cleaners in the local area, and then you can just brief them on what needs to be done, and they can go in directly and do the job. So there's always automating systems to be able to manage this whole process quite easily. So that's a good one as well. And you need a handyman. Again, this could be managed on your PMS. There are call outs for local handyman to do anything they need to. Mine are, again, I usually find them locally, and I usually find them on recommendation. And what they will do is they will fix anything that needs fixing between guests staying and between guests leaving and then coming in, the new guest coming in. So if it's just something simple like light bulb replacements or tightening some screws or putting a shelf back up, they can do all of those things. They can also report any more serious problems, and then I know that I can book them in for a longer period of time to do more major work. But just a general sweep of the property is usually quite good for them. So get them in every 4-6 weeks and make sure everything's working, nothing's broken, everything switches on, and if there is any problems, and they can report back, either fix them and report back what they did, or let me know if it's more major, and then we put in some time to do that. So that's the automation. That is essentially how you set up a rent to SA business, short-term letting. I hope I've answered everything. I think we've gone through how to find them, the benefits of having them for a landlord, how to automate it as a business, and also where you find the properties. Yeah, that's it. I think I've gone through everything. I did not expect to talk for as long as this on my own, and I'm sure it's probably getting to the point where I should finish. I hope I've covered everything there. I can talk all day about this sort of thing. There are so many different things you can go into, and Anna's really good with all this stuff as well. If you want to know a little bit more about Rent to SA, or you have any questions about property at all, you can contact Anna directly on her website, propertyempress.com. You can fill in a form, and there are requests for booking in calls. You can do a free 30-minute consultation with her. She also has additional services that you can book in for, and you can register to do some more advanced strategies and work with Anna. You can also reach out on her TikTok channel, on YouTube. There's also Instagram and Facebook as well. She is always available to answer questions. Please give us some feedback on the podcast in general as well, because now I'm involved, and as you can see, slowly taking over the place as I'm now on my own. I think it would be good to have some more requests for different subjects you'd like to talk about. I've really enjoyed being able to talk about something I understand a lot on and am quite heavily involved in. If there's more we want to talk about, I'm happy to do that. But apart from that, I think I am done. I hope it's been informative for everybody today. Thank you so much again for listening. We'll have Anna back next week. I'm certain of it. She will be back. I don't know what the subject's going to be yet, so I can't promote it, but we will put in some requests for questions, anything that people might want to talk about, and we will hopefully get to cover some of these the rest of the series. But apart from that, thank you so much again. I look forward to seeing you all on the next podcast. Goodbye.